Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And we have a really interesting guest today. Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, is here today. And he's been on the show before, but he's come back, and I'm so glad he did. And we're going to talk about his book today, Never Letting Go, Heal Grief with Help from the Other Side. And it's a really good book, and we're going to talk about that today. But before I bring Mark on, I want to talk about the state of humanity. Now, I pulled this up on the internet not too long ago, this whole situation with the election. And this is from the AP. Washington Attorney General William Barr has authorized federal prosecutors across the U.S. to pursue substantial allegations of voting irregularities if they exist before the 2020 presidential election is certified, despite no evidence of widespread fraud. Now, Barr's action comes days after Democrat Joe Biden defeated President Donald Trump and raises the prospect that Trump will use the Justice Department to try to challenge the outcome. It gives prosecutors the ability to go around longstanding Justice Department policy that normally would prohibit such overt actions before the election is certified. And all I'm going to say about this is that, we really need to make sure that things are done properly here in the United States, because my feeling is if they don't check and make sure everything goes okay, we're going to have the same issue next time, because it seemed like we had this issue last time. And the only really thing we have in our democracy is honesty. So, we have to be honest, and we have to know that our vote counts, and we have to count on the people who count them. So I don't know. It's I think it's a good thing that they're doing this, but that's what's going on in humanity. Now, on the upside, looks like, I got this from the BBC, looks like the COVID, we finally got a coronavirus vaccine. Looks like they're getting there. It says the quest for an effective vaccine against COVID-19 has seen a significant step forward with the announcement of milestone results. Preliminary findings show a vaccine developed by Pfizer and biotech can prevent more than 90% of people from getting COVID. So this is pretty exciting. They're the first to share their data from the final stages of testing, known as phase 3 trial. So this is a crucial point in vaccine development where some experimental vaccines will fail. This vaccine used a completely experimental approach, which involves injecting part of the virus's genetic code into people in order to train the immune system. I don't know, that sounds kind of weird to me. So we'll just have to stay tuned and see what happens with that. But it looks like they're coming up with a vaccine. And I have my thoughts on that too, on the whole COVID thing, but they're working on it. So that's a positive thing for humanity. So before I bring Mark on, he's been on before, but let me tell you a little bit about him. He is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer and the psychic explorer, aka psychic attorney and psychic adventurer, is a world-renowned fourth-generation science-based evidential psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is the author of the critically acclaimed Amazon and spiritual bestsellers Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. Now, Mark's credentials and experience are unparalleled in the paranormal world. He's an Oxford-educated trial attorney licensed to practice before the United States Supreme Court. In England, he studied mediumship at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College for the advancement of psychic science. Now, Mark has been a guest on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox Television, on major talk radio shows such as Coast to Coast AM, Darkness Radio, Sirius XM. Hey, welcome to High Road to Humanity, Mark.
Thank you, Nancy. It's great to be back. It's good to see you, and to all your audience, thank you for listening today and tuning in.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. This book was really good. Heal Grief with Help from the Other Side. And, this book, talk to me about why you wrote it or why you felt the need to write it. I feel like we don't deal with death so well here in the United States, our society. Is that kind of what your deal was, or?
Absolutely, we don't. There are some, I don't think any human being really deals with death all that well, because it changes your life. It pulls the rug right out from under you. And yes, we all know that people we love are going to die. We all know that we are going to die. And but when it happens, it's just so crushing. And
Mhm.
one of the quotes that I have in the book is, it comes from, I was raised in the Catholic faith. I wouldn't really consider myself Catholic. I consider
Right.
myself a universalist. I listen to all of the religions, all the faiths, because I believe that to to uh, to parody the X-Files, the truth is out there. But
Very good.
and certainly it is.
Yeah.
But one of my good friends, Father Sonny, he said that grief is the price of love,
Yeah.
because we grieve as deeply as we have loved. And I
Right.
remember when he said that to me, and I go, but it hurts so bad, Father Sonny. He said, yes, Mark, but a life without love isn't much of a life at all.
Right.
And when I wrote Never Letting Go, and to answer your question directly, and the problem is, whenever you ask a lawyer a question, if you ask a lawyer what time is it, we tell you how to build a clock.
No, I'm really glad you're talking about this, because no, and I read that quote in your book, and I thought it was it was a really, really good quote. You talk a lot about what it's like to connect with your loved ones after they've passed. And I think it's neat, because you go into the book and you talk and you tell people how to pay attention to the signs and stuff like that.
That's very important, and that is why I wrote Never Letting Go. What had happened is, I was practicing law full time,
Okay.
and my mother had passed
Right.
abruptly, unexpectedly. And when I look back on what happened, is the day before she died, and I had no clue that she was going to pass. I mean, she looked fine
Right.
because,
And I
yeah,
want to interject something really quick. You were really close to your mom.
yeah, we were very close because she was a medium. Both my
Right.
parents were mediums, and
Right.
I had a good relationship with my parents. We got along.
It's
We were
awesome.
friends too. We'd do stuff together. And I was sitting in my law office, and I was really hungry, and I started thinking about spaghetti. Okay, now I'm of Italian descent, so we think about spaghetti.
Right.
And I just decided to call my mom,
Okay.
and she said, "Hey, Mark, I made spaghetti for lunch. Why don't you come over?" And so
Okay.
I did, and it was great. And I went over, and I saw that she looked a bit tired. My dad was there, and we had lunch together, and we were laughing and talking. And um, as I got up to leave, she said, "Mark, I want to talk to you." And she said, "I'm so happy that you've been my son."
Oh
And
my
she
gosh.
hugged me and kissed me, and I said, "I love you too, Mom."
Oh.
And I thought, well, I mean, we always hugged and
Yeah.
kissed, and my brother, sister, my family were very tactile. But when I left, I just had this ominous feeling. And the next morning, when I was in court, the judge's assistant came into the courtroom and said, "Mark, we got to see you right now." And then I got the call that she had passed unexpectedly, and so I was devastated. And when people say, "Well, you're a psychic, you should have seen that coming," you know, being psychic, being a medium gives you insights
Right.
into things. It does not make one all knowing and all seeing.
Right. I agree.
And yeah, and about 2 weeks after Mom passed, and I was devastated. I was driving from the courthouse back to my office, and I was running a law firm at the time.
Mhm.
And I knew I needed to pull over. And I pulled over into this little strip mall, and I just sat there, and I was just so upset. So I'm sitting here in my car all by myself, and all of a sudden this flash of light fills the car, and I
Uh-huh.
look to the passenger side, and I see the silhouette of my mother in this silver white light, and I hear her voice fill my head, and she said to me, "Mark, you've been given the gift of mediumship so that you would not be crushed by grief. Now you must help those who are suffering with theirs."
Right.
And
Wonderful.
that's what made me decide to write
That
Never
book.
Letting Go.
The book. I'm going to share something with you real quick. And I've told the story on the show before, but I don't think I ever told you. My father died last year in June, and I was in Texas and he was in New Mexico. And my daughter had FaceTimed me to say, so I could say goodbye, because I booked a flight to hopefully I would get there the next day. But I told him how much I loved him and how much I cared about him. And I went back into the living room and I sat down on the couch with my husband, and I looked up, and my dad was standing there, but he was young.
Yeah.
And he was young, and he had on jeans and a shirt with rolled up sleeves, and he did the wave. He did the, like, "See you later." and that was it. But man,
Isn't that wonderful?
well, it changed my life.
What a
It changed
gift.
my life. Yeah. Because then when you
I
see,
bet.
yeah, when you see it, you know, when you actually see it, you're like, whoa, what a gift. I looked at it as a gift from God that he allowed me to see. Yeah.
It truly is a gift from God,
Yeah.
Nancy. And
Yeah.
what you just described is so more widely experienced than people will admit.
I know.
Uh, and yet people tend to doubt it, or they think it's a grief-induced hallucination.
Well, you're right. Because my mom didn't believe me.
And that hurts when it's your family that.
Yeah, she didn't believe me. She's like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, I really did. So it's hard. You're exactly right when you say that a lot of times people, or they know what happens, but they won't say.
Or they give you that look,
like you're nuts or something.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because as a medium, and I communicate with spirits. On
Right.
one hand, I have the religious fanatics who love, they claim to be Christians, but you're not a Christian when you have a mouthful of scripture and a heart full of hate and judgment. Okay,
There you go.
that's
Bingo.
not a Christian. That's
Right.
a religious fanatic. Okay,
Right, right.
and then on the other side, you don't have skeptics, you have cynics.
Right.
Because a skeptic is open-minded, and if evidence is produced, will believe it. But a
Right.
cynic is just, I don't believe this because my mind is closed.
Right.
And so it's funny, you got religious nuts on one side and atheist cynics on the other, and none of them matter. None of that matters. What matters is making the connection for someone.
Bingo.
And Nancy brought up an extremely important point, the way your father appeared young and handsome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is not unusual in contact experiences and also in near-death experiences. When people leave their body, they flatline, they go through the tunnel into the light, and they encounter the spirits of loved ones who've passed.
Right.
And the reason that their loved ones or your dad appeared young is because he was letting you know that he is now pure energy.
Yeah.
And energy doesn't get old, it doesn't get sick, it doesn't die. And I remember encountering my mother and looking young and beautiful. And
Is that what she looked like too? Did she look young when you saw her in the car? Okay.
Yeah. No. This was another time.
Oh,
in the
another
car,
time.
she was this
Okay.
flash of white light and silver, and I was like,
In awe.
in awe. And in another
Yeah.
time, actually, it was in a dream, in a contact experience, where I sat down at this table, and it was really a fascinating dream. Everything in the room was white, the tables, the chairs, but there was this giant window behind my mom, and I could see clouds going by.
Wow.
And there she was in this beautiful black, white, and blue dress. It was like splashes of paint,
Yeah,
and my mother was an artist, and she looked gorgeous, and she looked so young. I never saw her that young. My parents had me when they were a bit older.
Okay.
And I go, Mom, you look so young and beautiful. Why do you look that way? And she said, because I can. Even in my dream, I started laughing, and I thought, well, yeah, who wouldn't?
Right.
I mean, if we can all morph into 22-year-old versions of ourselves that were, physically perfect and healthy, and that's what energy is, because we know from the laws of physics,
right,
that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is
It's
only
just
transferred from one form to another.
Right, exactly. Wow, that's so interesting. I love it. You're telling these stories to me, and that's why people come to you, because they're grieving and they need confirmation. That was my confirmation because I was really close to my dad. That was your confirmation because you were really close to your mom. But sometimes people aren't connected like we are, because I do meditate and I connect with God every day. That's why it's nice to have people like you that will sit down and bring in the loved ones. You've got to feel some sense of really helping people when you do that.
Absolutely. And what I do during spirit communication, I have to try to remain as objective as possible,
right,
to convey the information that comes through, because sometimes people don't want to hear the messages.
I know. I was reading that in your book.
Yeah, they get all bent out. I was doing a reading the other day, and the spirit came through and started talking about my client's daughter, who's alive and well. Right. And I said that she's got allergies, and I said, it's okay for her. I go, she's something about her and poodles. She goes, well, she's got a couple poodles. The poodles are okay because they're hypoallergenic. I said, but other types of dogs she can't be around because she's got these allergies, which are contributing to her underlying health conditions. And the
Right.
client said, well, yeah, she does. She has all these health problems and the doctors can't figure out what it is. But she's a dog groomer. So it's not like she's going to, and she started arguing with me. And I'm like, look, I'm not here to argue with you about your daughter's avocation, but the spirits are telling me that she needs to go to an allergist. This is the problem. And, and she said, but she doesn't want to give that up. I said, okay, if I tell you that you have lung cancer, yet you continue smoking, how wise is that?
Right.
And it's nothing about like disliking animals, but if you're allergic to them and they're making you extremely ill.
Right. You have to stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we're getting ready to go to commercial break. You guys, I'm here today with Mark Anthony. He's the psychic lawyer. His book that we're talking about today is Never Letting Go, Heal Grief with Help from the Other Side. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity, and we will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with Mark Anthony. Mark, I'm so glad you came on today so we can talk about some of these things because we don't deal with death well. We didn't finish really addressing that. I don't know why, as a society, we're afraid, how can I say this? I'm not afraid to die, but that's because I know better. And I think if people knew better, which is why you wrote this book in a lot of ways, I think, and why I do this show is that, people will realize that this isn't it. And I think it's nice to tell them that there is evidence that this isn't it.
I think that's extremely important for people to understand because we don't deal with death well because it hurts. It hurts really bad. And, when someone that you love dies, even though we may have been raised in a religion or some type of belief system, there's the fear that maybe it's not true. Maybe they disintegrated into nothingness and that fear of separation. I mean, human beings are very complex beings, and love is a very, very strong emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And our culture is I'd say the European and the North American cultures are rather almost ridiculous because we ignore, we pretend.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Avoid that death actually happens.
Yeah. Well, but when you get to a point where you kind of start to know all this stuff like I do, and I help people pass to go to the light, that's something that I do. I don't do so much what you do. They just come to me and I help them go to the light. And I guess there's a name for me. Somebody told me that there's like a psycho pump or something that I do, that I take people there. But the thing is, once you're connected with God and you realize that there is an afterlife, I guess I just want to say, I'm happy for my dad. Like, I'm happy because he couldn't walk. And then he was standing there, young and strong, and he wasn't sick anymore. So in a lot of ways, I've changed my views. And I wish we could get to that point as a society, if that makes sense.
Well, yes. I wish we could. But
that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Well, we also have to be very careful. Like earlier when you were talking about current events, and I don't want to get political, but
right.
Think about if you lived in a country like Iran, Saudi Arabia, or under the Taliban, where you are required by law to be a member of a faith and to believe a certain way. Right. Oh, and by the way, people like you and I would be beheaded, okay, because they consider that sorcery. And I think that it is best to keep religion and politics separate.
I agree.
And I'm going to put in my plug. Religious liberty laws are a travesty and a violation of the First Amendment separation of church and state, because it's not just Christians who will take advantage of these laws. Mm-hmm. And the people that want, there's a reason that the founders of this country realized there had to be separation of church and state, because they had viewed the last 1,000 years of European history being one religious war after the next.
Right, the Christians and
the Christians, the Muslims, the Christians and Christians and the Catholics, and and all this, and how every country in Europe, with the possible exception of Holland, had a monarch slash religious head of state. Now in England, it was the king, who's also the head of the Church of England, but at France and Spain and Portugal and every other principality, there was a ruler and then a religious head of state as well. So when you have religion shoved down your throat at the point of a gun, it ceases to be about faith. So, but we as a society have this freedom, which is a very precious thing.
Right.
And we need to, and it's also a very fragile thing.
Right.
America's the great experiment. I mean, this is an idea, and ideas can be terminated. But be that as it may, it's important for us as a society to realize that life continues beyond the material. We're always going to have the Newtonian reductionist materialists, and this is one of the lectures that I give. I love Sir Isaac Newton. He invented physics and calculus and all these really, brainiac things.
Right.
But he also set the tone for the scientific community, or at least a big portion of it, to think that everything can be observed, and if it can't be observed, therefore it doesn't exist.
Right.
And so therefore there's no afterlife. And yet with the advent of quantum physics in the 20th century, we began to see that there were things even smaller than atoms. There was electrons, protons, neutrons, and on a smaller level than quanta. And that everything on its most basic level is energy. Mm-hmm. So now we know, and a lot of quantum physicists are coming forward and explaining that eternal life does not violate the laws of physics. Right. Rather, it is in conformity with it. So I think with that understanding, it helps us to realize that someone that meant so much to you did not disintegrate into the void, but they have their consciousness, their soul, their spirit, whatever you want to call that which makes us who we are, is electromagnetic energy and does survive physical death.
Right. They've just gone to a different dimension, and they've changed how their form is. They're not in the physical body, and it's true. I'd love to see where the scientists, and we're getting there. I really feel like we're getting there. I have a lot of scientists that come on to the show, and I had Maurice Cotterell come on not too long ago from Ireland, and we talked about this and the energy and all of it. And I think we're getting there. I really do. Don't you, Mark? Do you think we're getting closer?
Oh, absolutely. Work with, I speak fairly regularly at the International Association of Near-Death Studies.
Oh, wow.
And I work with, and I know the scientists that study survival of consciousness, the afterlife, and NDEs, near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. And for the past 40 plus years, since Dr. Raymond Moody coined the term near-death experience, which is when somebody dies, they leave their body, their consciousness remains intact, and they go through a tunnel and they encounter the light and deceased loved ones, and then they return. And these have been studied worldwide, and it doesn't matter what religion, ethnic background, orientation, faith or not faith, people, they're all very, very similar. And this in and of itself is proof that consciousness survives physical death.
Right.
So we're having it examined through near-death experience. And then there's also people like my friend and colleague, Dr. Gary Schwartz, who's working on technology to communicate with spirits.
Right.
So yeah, I think you're right, Nancy. It's within our grasp.
I think so. I really do. And I wrote my book on energy, Wake Up, the Universe is Speaking to You. And I've always believed in the power of energy. We all are energy, and we just have to look at things a little differently. So I don't know. I want to talk really quick about, you talked about faith, and faith to me is just really important because it's something that you can't see. It's believing in something you can't see. And you were talking in your book, a friend of yours, Joe, said you have to have faith in God to carry through the times of darkness, because God never abandons us. And I think if we could just get back to that, whatever religion you are, to know that there's a higher power up there that doesn't abandon us and does love us unconditionally. I think if we could just get that point across to people. Can you talk about that a little?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's important to have a belief system. And, a lot of people, where things go wrong is when, well, my way is the only way.
Right.
Okay. And, I was lecturing to a group of people, and like half the audience was African American. And I looked at them and said, we all know God's a neurotic white guy sitting on a throne, smiting people with a scepter, right? And then everyone in the room started laughing. And it's that, there's this conception that God is some type of white European king.
Yeah.
But for people who actually believe that, it's okay if they want to believe that. But what we're dealing with when we talk about the divine power people refer to as God is this infinite intelligence energy which binds and connects all of us. And that's very difficult for the human mind, or rather it's impossible. The human mind simply cannot grasp or process infinity. It is beyond our capability, and there's various reasons for that. But the human mind did not create the soul or consciousness.
Right.
It's like a computer hard drive that merely hosts it, and when the hard drive crashes, it moves on.
Right.
Right. And so for various reasons, we are living in the material world and limited to finite perception because we can experience things in this state that we can't in an infinite state.
No, I'm going to stop you. I believe that we are here experiencing for God because God can't experience. What do you believe? Do you believe that?
Well, I believe that we're all cells in the body of God, so that what we all experience is being experienced by God.
Yes.
And that's why we're all energetically interlinked.
That's why we're all connected. Right. There you go.
And so people put a human face on God so that you can relate to it.
Right.
And it's fascinating the way Judaism and Islam, it is an abomination, a sin, a beheading offense in some radical Islamic sectors to make any type of depiction of God. But for most religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and several others, there's been depictions in art of God because, in other words, was Jesus God on earth? Some people believe he was, others don't. Because it's easier for us to relate to a person.
Right.
Yeah, there's this super wonderful, healing, beautiful, loving guy who told the world about peace and love and understanding, yet so many of his followers do the exact opposite. I never quite understood that.
Right.
In Hinduism, it's interesting because I know a lot of Hindus and I've studied it extensively. And I'm like, well, you believe in several gods. And I'm like, do we? Yeah. Or are they different manifestations of the same energy?
Of the same thing. Hey, we're getting ready to go to commercial break, but before we do, I want to read something out of your book. You say, the Hindus believe when you look into the eyes of someone you love, who loves you back, you are catching a glimpse of God. I thought that was really, really cool. Really, really neat. Thanks for sharing that in the book. Hey, you guys, this is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with Mark Anthony. His book is Never Letting Go, and we will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout back here with Mark Anthony. Mark, I love our conversations because you get all this stuff and it's so fun to talk to you. It's really interesting.
Likewise.
It's fun. It's fun. Thank you. Talk about angels because we all have one. And my biggest thing that I always tell people, so I wanted you to address it because you're so knowledgeable. We all have angels, but you have to ask. That's my biggest thing. You got to ask. You got to talk to them. Can you address the whole angel situation?
Well, the first time I encountered angels, I was 4 years old, and it was when I died. I had a near-death experience.
I remember. Tell the audience.
Well, I was very, very sick. Okay, my family was living in Orlando. My dad was a Navy SEAL and a NASA engineer, and so he was away on business. And my mom took me to the doctor, and I had impetigo, which was going around. And normally it's okay, you take the child home, you put him in a bath, keep the fever down. But what the doctor didn't realize is I had septicemia, and which was an infection in the blood, and my fever kept skyrocketing. Mom couldn't get it down, and then I started going in convulsions and stopped breathing. Oh, wow. And she ran out front of the house and was screaming, God, help me, help me. And my brother had run across the street. the neighbor there was a fireman, and he happened to be home, and he runs across, and so he's doing compressions on my chest, and my sister had called an ambulance, and they get me in the ambulance, and they slammed the door. The mom jumped in, slammed the door, and it slammed on the oxygen hose.
Oh yes,
So
I
then
remember this.
and the paramedics trying to get me oxygen, and the next thing I know, I'm flying through the roof of the ambulance, and I'm watching it go down the highway. And even at 4, I mean, I knew what numbers were, and I could read to some extent. And I was wondering why there were numbers on the top of the ambulance. And then the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by these beautiful, beautiful entities. And
What'd they look like? What'd they look like, Mark?
Like Academy Awards, except not gold, but clear. And they glowed from the inside out.
Okay.
And in subsequent readings that I've done in my work as a medium, I now know those to be angels. That's what they look like.
Right.
And they were around me, and they were very sweet and very gentle. And they kept telling me that everything will be fine. And then the light got even brighter, and I heard the words eternal light, eternal life. And meanwhile, in the ambulance,
wow.
The EMT told my mother, he says, he's going to die unless we get that hose free. And she said, I'll do it. So she cranks open the door. He's got her by the waist. He's holding on to, the inside of the ambulance. She gets her foot, she yanks it in, and all of a sudden they get the air going. And meanwhile, I'm in this euphoric, beautiful place, and the angelic entities are loving me. And all of a sudden I'm shocked back into reality when I hear clear, and they hit me with defibrillator paddles.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got me breathing again. And I remember hours later in the hospital, and they had me on all these IV antibiotics, and the fever started coming down. And I started, my dad had flown in from Huntsville, where he'd been in business. And I'm asking my parents, what does eternal mean?
Oh yeah, I remember you saying that, eternal.
Yeah.
For a 4-year-old to ask their parents what eternal.
Yeah, they were looking I remember they looked at each other, and they looked at me. And my dad said I was always difficult as a child because I would always ask difficult questions.
Right.
I wasn't one of these goo goo gaga baby talk. I remember I had to go to the doctor once, and they were trying to get me to, and they were talking to me in baby talk, and I'm staring at them, and the doctor says, there's something wrong with your son. And she goes, don't talk to Mark that way. Just tell him what you want.
Right.
And then I would ask questions about what are you testing for and all this. And so my parents said, from this young age you start. And then after the NDE, they said, we realized we couldn't make things up. I mean, it's like funny when, I think I was like six or 7, and I found a geography book, and I was reading it, and it said how the polar ice caps would recede during the summer, and I concluded, therefore, that Santa's castle must then sink into the ice.
Oh no!
Armed with my geography book, I confront my parents, and I'm going through, and I remember they were like trying not to laugh, I'm like,
oh my gosh.
You would have me believe, and so that's how I discovered.
Santa Claus is real. Come on.
Well, that's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother show.
I do a whole lecture series.
Oh my God, Mark, do you really?
Mysteries. Yeah, I do ancient mysteries.
Oh,
I have one about on the Christmas season, and I get into what the Star of Bethlehem really was this unusual astrological alignment. It's been verified by the astrophysics department of Notre Dame and of Rutgers.
Hey, wait a minute. And the 3 wise men were psychic in my mind.
Well, they were the Magi, which is the root word of magician, but the Magi were the bureaucrats of the Parthian/Persian Empire, and they were schooled in divination, astrology, and astronomy, which in the ancient world were essentially one and the same.
Right.
And so for Magi, or Magians, as they were called collectively, it was okay to exhibit what we call psychic abilities. So psychics have been advising people for centuries, but Saint Nicholas was a very real person, and in a sense, he really did come down the chimney.
Okay, so do we have to have you back for Christmas, Mark Anthony?
Maybe.
Oh my God.
So I'll leave that teaser
I
up.
love it. I have a question. You have a lot of brothers and sisters, and you're the youngest, right?
One of each. I have one of each, yeah.
Okay.
Older brother, older sister, yeah.
Older sister. Are they psychic?
Um, yes, they're intuitive. I'm the medium, okay?
Okay.
But both of them exhibit a lot of psychic ability. It's funny because like I'll be with my sister and we'll be talking about my brother, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's him. He goes,
Right.
"What
I
are you
heard
guys
you.
talking about?"
Yeah.
Well, actually, we were just talking about you, and premonitions. I remember one time I was on the phone with my brother. And he goes, "God, I got this really terrible feeling something bad's going to happen to my son, like he's going to get cut or something." I go, "That's really weird." And all of a sudden I hear in the back, "Dad, I cut myself on." He was outside sawing something and the
Oh my
saw slipped and
gosh.
it sliced his hand. My brother's like, "Gotta go." And so our whole life has been like that. And
Mm.
it's always, you get the snarky people, "What if they give you lottery numbers?" As if we
Right.
don't ask,
Right.
and
Yeah,
and
it
it's like,
doesn't work like that. It
hey,
really doesn't
no,
work.
it doesn't work like that because it's not supposed to work like that.
Correct. Right.
Because if I'm supposed to win the lottery, then I'm going to win it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But this ability is not to be used. The other side, they look at material possessions without any interest at all.
Correct.
And I
And
can
that's how
tell.
we should look at it too, actually, Mark. I want to ask you
Yeah.
something. Yeah, right. We should look at it like that too. I want to ask you something really quick. You're talking about being psychic and knowing things. And I have over the years, I've always dealt with different psychics, and I've become more and more psychic over the years myself. But I've also seen, and I won't mention any names, different psychics who seem to have lost their abilities because maybe they use them, and I've really seen this, in the improper way, like they charged too much money or said things they shouldn't have said. What's your feeling on that? Because that I've seen that happen over the years. And
I'm
it goes along those lines, what we're talking about. You use your power
yeah.
for good and not for evil.
Yeah, I'm aware of some of the people you're
Mhm.
talking about. I
I
think,
know. We don't ever
yeah.
bring that up, but
Well, no, because they have their mission, and life is, there's no mistakes in life. However, there are lessons, and
correct.
lessons will be repeated until they are learned. So the people who are taking this ability, which is to be used to help
Humanity.
individuals, humanity,
Yeah.
and they use it for strictly personal gain, perhaps the lesson they're being presented with is a block. And you're very, very wise in the ways of energy.
Yes.
And desire, angst, avarice, materialism is an energetic block.
Right.
You brought up a fascinating story about seeing your father right after he passed looking young and beautiful. Now, the reason that you did is because you did not try or expect for it to happen.
Right.
Therefore, there was no deflector shield.
Right.
And a lot of people come to me and they say, "Well, I want to hear from my father, and why doesn't he come to me?" And and what it is, they're desperate, and they certainly are desirous of the contact, and they absolutely love the
That
person,
person.
but
Yeah.
by the angst, the desire, the pain, without intending to, they're
They're blocking.
raising the deflector shield. Yeah, I like to use the Star Wars, Star Trek analogy of shields up, okay? Because we've all seen that. And once again,
Yeah.
it's energy. So
Yeah.
we want to lower deflector shields.
Oh
And
yeah.
so one of the things that I tell people is, okay, certainly when you're ready, you come to a legitimate medium. Or if you want that contact experience yourself, instead of saying, "I want you to come to me," change the focus of the energy to, "I invite you into my dreams.
There
I
you go.
welcome a sign for you," and then leave it at that. Because if you constantly, I want, it's not going to
You're
happen.
pushing the energy away.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's difficult because you want that. And so when that happens, you'll start getting the dreams, or you'll start noticing the signs and the nuances. And that's one of the chapters in Never Letting Go is
Hmm.
about contact experiences and
Yeah.
what to look for. And that's important for people
Well,
on the
yeah.
journey through grief, is to be aware, because they will reach out to you
I know.
if
And
you're receptive.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the ways they reach out when we come back from commercial break. Hey, you guys, we got to go to commercial break here. And Mark, what's the way people can get in contact with you? And I'm really sorry I didn't say that earlier. How can people book an appointment with you?
Well, if they go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, or
Okay.
since we're mentioning my book, neverlettinggo.com, because they'll both go
Okay.
to the same domain.
Okay.
And if they mention Nancy Year Out and or High Road to Humanity, you will qualify for a reduced fee reading. I'm
Ooh.
making this available as a gift to your to your listeners.
Thank you.
But please make sure you click on phone reading and not contact Mark, because people go to contact Mark and they go, well, how much is the reading? How much is this? How? And if you click on phone reading, it will explain all of that and answer most of your questions, because some people may not want to do this, other people will. So if you'd like to be eligible for a reduced fee reading, evidenceofeternity.com, and in the application form you have to mention Nancy's name or High Road to Humanity.
How exciting. Hey, you guys, there you go. So make sure you go to his website and check out his book. It's Never Letting Go. This is Nancy, you're out. This is High Road to Humanity, and we will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. Hey, let's talk about some of the signs, Mark, that people leave. I always find pennies, always. I'm one of these penny finders. Or I will hear a song, because my sister always sang, and she's passed several years ago, and then I know it's her. That's my way of knowing it's her. I'll hear a song because she was a singer and she would play piano. So talk to the audience about some of those different things that I'm mentioning.
Oh, there's several different types. Dreams certainly are one of the most popular forms. And that's because, first off, you're in a relaxed physical and hopefully mental state. And that we've got 5 different brainwave frequencies. There's beta, and beta now has a subgroup of gamma. I don't want to get into that. But anyway, you go from alpha to beta to alpha to theta. On the alpha theta border is when brainwave frequency, your brainwave frequency begins to rise, and spirits are able to spot that, and they align theirs, and you get a frequency match.
Got it.
And that's why, even the Bible, which the stone throwing religious fanatics say is against divination, except it's filled with prophetic dreams, and examples of that, because this is probably the most accepted form of spirit contact. People say, I had a dream and my child came to me and I knew that it was her. Because you are getting the direct contact, and you'll know that it is a contact experience in the sleep state, because dreams have that surrealistic, nonsensical quality, whereas a contact experience has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's coherent. And when you come out of it, you feel like I was just talking to my loved one, because you were.
Right.
Then there are all sorts of little signs, like you said, pennies. Well, the question is, do these spirits make the penny materialize there, or do they direct your attention to it? You see it, immediately think of them, because it's all part of what I call a frequency beacon, which is one of the chapters in my second book, Evidence of Eternity, because I explain it, how spirits will send us frequency beacons. And frequency beacons are pretty complex, but very common. For example, you're driving in your car, you suddenly start thinking of your mom, you turn on the radio, and there's that song.
Right.
That makes you think of her. Do you think you just turned the radio on by happen chance? No, that's a frequency beacon. Spirits are tuned into frequency. They know that song is playing. Mom pops in, motivates you to turn on the radio, and voila, there it is. And so frequency beacons work both ways. You can be grieving excessively, and it will draw a spirit to you, or a spirit will send an impulse to you, such as to look in a certain direction. Or people say a lot that, oh, I see cardinals. I see, red birds.
Yeah, I do too. I see yellow birds and cardinals quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the spirits will also direct your attention in that general direction of the bird. Right. And also think about it. They're always picking bright, things.
Yeah. So you can see it.
Yeah. I mean, if they pick a camouflaged creature, it's they're picking a chameleon that turned, the color of the leaves it's in. But they will do things like that. Right. Then there's going to be the direct experience like you had, where you actually see for just an instant. Mm-hmm. We'd like them to come in and sit down and have lunch with us, but what happens is it takes a lot of energy on their part to do this.
Yeah.
and
Now,
you will
I,
see it. Yeah.
can I ask you a question? And I felt this. Well, I know what it is, but I want to talk about it because people don't talk about it. My dad used to always grab my toe when I was in bed when I was a little kid, and so now since he's been gone, every once in a while I'll feel my toe and I feel the energy on my toe, and I just know that's my dad because that I can relate to that. Have you heard that before?
Absolutely, all the time.
Right.
There's a frequency beacon right there.
Yeah.
Okay, your dad used to pull your toe. Well, you're feeling that because he's sending that
Yeah.
impulse that your electrical system and your nervous system is picking up on.
Right. So I know it's him. Hey, I want to know, I know you help a lot of people and you probably help a lot of grieving parents who've lost children. Can you address that a little bit?
The reason I'm taking a breath is there are no words to express the agony and the pain that a parent experiences at the death of a child.
Right.
And I do a lot of work with the organization helping parents heal, which is wonderful because it's by parents who've lost children for parents who've lost children. But unlike other organizations where it's a pity party and everyone sits around, I mean, I've been to grief support groups for parents and they're sitting there showing pictures of their kids and talking about them as if they're still alive.
Right.
Now, I certainly understand the sentimentality of wanting to do that, but acceptance is a very, very important part of getting through the journey through grief. And what I like about helping parents heal is that the founder, Elizabeth Boisson, she told me that you can heal from the death of a child. That doesn't mean you get over it, but you
Right.
can
Yeah.
heal and accepting the reality of the physical death. But the other nice thing about that is they firmly advocate spirit communication. And long before I ever, started working with them, I've always, well, that's the whole point of mediumship. It's an important therapeutic step in the journey through grief.
Right.
And so it's not a substitute for the physicality of the person being here, because I know a lot of people, they get a reading and then they want another reading the next week and another reading, and I won't do that.
Right.
I say you have to wait 6 months in between readings because you can't substitute
They're obsessing.
reading. You're obsessing.
Right.
I saw something, I won't say where, but I saw something extremely unhealthy about a year and a half ago.
Right.
Where I was at this, speaking of butterflies, I was at a butterfly pavilion, and there was this couple there. They looked like they're in their early to mid 30s, and they had this doll of about a year and a half, 2-year-old girl, and they kept positioning her, taking pictures, and oh, she likes this and she likes that. And I say, oh, do you sell those? And one goes, no, it's mine, it's mine. And the husband goes, mind your own business. We lost a child, and she was treating the doll
Like it was the child.
like it was the child. And every psychologist, every grief counselor, every behaviorist that I've talked to said that is about as unhealthy
Right.
a thing as you can do.
Yeah.
Because, some people, surrogate therapy. No, you have to deal with reality.
Right.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
a piece of cloth and stuffing. That is not your child.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I had Joe McQuillan on my show a couple times, and Joe lost his son. I don't know if you're familiar with him, and he wrote a book about his son who passed. And one thing he started to do, which I thought was quite good, is he does like automatic writing. So he's not constantly going to a psychic. He does more meditation. He connects with him now himself, and he just writes what he feels that he wants to say to him. Do you recommend that?
Certainly. On my website, evidenceofeternity.com, there's a section entitled Grief Management.
Okay.
And if you go there, there are several different coping techniques, and I call them coping strategies.
Okay.
And I call it grief management, because there's no cure for grief. It's part of the
Right.
human condition.
Right.
And there's also a section that people who should go to, even if you haven't lost somebody, but know a person who does. It's the 10 things to say to someone in grief and the 10 things to not say to someone in grief.
Okay.
And you don't say to a parent who lost a child, well, you can always have another child.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've actually seen people say things like that, or well, you're young, you can meet somebody else, or she was really old, or they had to get.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and the thing is, the people that say stuff like this, for the most part, I'd say 99% of the time, they don't mean it to be hurtful.
Right, but they don't think.
They don't think, and they don't know what to say. And then I get the things that you should say, like, you know what I always loved about your mom? She was so funny. She would tell the best story, tell a happy story, or just say, she was really nice, or tell them, I wish I knew what to say.
Right, but don't say something like, like that.
Yeah. Oh, she's in a better place. Oh, don't ever tell someone. Yes, they are in a better place energetically and all that, and I get it. But you don't tell somebody who lost a loved one that the person that was so precious to them is in a better place.
Yeah, and we need to be schooled on that, because I have, and even though I know this stuff, sometimes it's tough. My daughter lost her father, my ex-husband, not too long ago, and it's hard because being spiritual, I think I said something to her like that. He is in a better place, because I know he's in a better place. But you're right, to the other person, it just seems cold and callous, and you're not even realizing. I think we just don't realize what we're supposed to say sometimes.
Exactly. And sometimes don't say anything, just hug them.
Right.
Or say, if you need to talk, I'm here.
Right.
Because everyone says, if there's anything I can do, say, look, do you want me to go to the store and pick up some groceries?
There you go.
Do you want me to do something for you around the house? And let them know I am only a phone call away. Okay. People need to know that they're not alone, that somebody cares. And, you can say, you and your family will be in my thoughts and prayers. That's more comforting than, well, they're in a better place. And the worst thing is,
I know.
Well, he kind of brought it down on himself with his drinking. I've heard people say those things. I actually heard, I wrote about this woman in my book, Never Letting Go, Vicky Rios Martinez. Her little boy was horribly raped and murdered by a serial killer. And a year after her son Junie died, somebody actually said to her, well, it's been a year now. Aren't you over it yet?
Wow. How did we get so unfeeling? How did we get so uncompassionate? We need to bring the compassion back, don't we, Mark?
Empathy is not a bad thing. And I want to speak to your male listeners for a moment.
Okay.
We
got about 2 minutes.
Men are socialized not to cry.
I know.
Crying is actually healthy for you because recent studies have found tears of grief contain the neurotransmitters, the actual chemicals that cause depression. Crying gets it out of your body. Crying is healthy. Okay, we have tear ducts, hearts, and feelings for a reason, guys. Do it privately. Do it in your man cave, your car, or somewhere parked and far away from everyone, and cry, because it will actually get the depression chemically, physically, and emotionally out of you.
Wow. That is wonderful advice. Gosh, Mark, thank you. That's really fantastic advice. Hey, we got to go. We got to get out of here today. But Mark's book is Never Letting Go, Heal Grief with Help from the Other Side. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm holding it up today. Mark, tell everybody how they can get in contact with you one more time.
neverlettinggo.com, and make sure if you apply for a reading that you mention Nancy's name and High Road to Humanity. You will qualify for a reduction in the fee for a reading. And I look forward to returning, Nancy, and I want to thank you for having me on the show. And to everyone who's coping with the loss of a loved one, you're not alone. You're not alone. God bless you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Hey, you guys, God bless everybody. Have a terrific week. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity, and I'll see you next week. Take care.
Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hey, you guys, join me next week on The High Road for more stories filled with wisdom, love, and hope for our future. Have a fabulous week, and know that by staying on the high road, you will make it to your destination. Visit my website, nancyyearout.com, where you can book a private session to learn how to tap into your own abilities. And check out my YouTube channel. It's Nancy Yearout, High Road to Humanity.
You can achieve your goal.